Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by GrandTheftWorld.com. This is episode 85. It's something like June 19th, 2022. Happy Father's Day to the fathers out there. We're going to be talking a lot about past week's events, a little deep dive into what's behind these events so we can understand the contextual history. Usually we take the week's news, we compress it down to like 5, 6, 7 hours. You don't have to watch it all at once. You can take it in little snippets at a time. A lot of people watching us on the replay. Everybody, welcome. So tonight we're going to look in. Build Back Better was a plan that Joe Biden had, and recently, like many of the other things he's said, he's got a new plan. It's got a new, better version. It's called Build Bike Better, and apparently he went for a ride on the bike. And everyone knows that anything in life, it's like it's like riding a bike. You can just get back on and remember how to do it, and we'll see how that goes for him.
I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my.
Come on, man.
I'm falling and I can't get up.
Also, this past week, I had the opportunity to go on Sam Tripoli's Tinfoil Hat podcast, break open some of the current events and connect it to the contextual history of the past 100 years.
What makes this show great is you guys know that. You see the left-right paradigm and you stop playing that. Now you see them both. Like they do a little bit on both sides, right? So you have to be discerning. You have to look at all the evidence. You have to weigh it for yourself to make informed choices, decisions, judgments in life. These sort of things come to salient conclusions that reflect reality. And in order to do that, I advise, like the way I've done it over the past couple decades is I like to get the artifacts from reality. What is the evidence, right? So I brought you guys a special piece of evidence today, but before I can show you this, I got to tell you a short story.
Ooh.
Once upon a time in the late 1800s, there was a very powerful press magnate in journalism over in Britain. His name was William T. Stead. And William T. Stead became famous not only for being in charge of newspapers and being influential, but he did the first ever interview, something we see and take for granted every day. His interview was with a British general named Gordon, who had subjugated India. And in like 1886, they get together, they publicize the results of their interview. It was total propaganda on their part to build the empire, but that's the origin, right? So William T. Stead, he then becomes friends with this guy, Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was someone who was funded by the Rothschilds, goes down to South Africa, takes over and consolidates all these mines, makes De Beers, which was a monopoly, has some gold mines, dies at an early age, like 41, and he's friends with Rudyard Kipling, who was an imperialist, Freemason, spy type guy. So Rudyard Kipling, Rhodes, William T. Stead, some people say it's Steed, they're thinking about how to serve the empire. Now, Freemasonry has a goal, British Empire has a goal. So what Rhodes did was he became useful to those bigger, larger groups, a secret society and an empire, and maybe even the financing family behind him, the Rothschilds. So he's satiating he's kind of like Machiavelli helping the Medicis.
Yeah.
So Rhodes is facilitating not his goal. He believed in it, but he heard it from John Ruskin and Oxford, and Conan Doyle also had this goal. So there's a lot of British people that wanted America back into the empire. And Rhodes said, let me take my immense wealth and create the Rhodes scholarships and a secret society for the purpose of bringing America back into the empire so they could take over the world. This started in 1902. Now, William T. Stead died in 1912 on the Titanic. There's a memorial to him in Central Park, even though he's a British press magnate. I have William T. Stead's own copy of the book called The Last Will and Testament of Cecil Rhodes, with elucidatory notes added to the text by the editor, who is William T. Stead. So I'm going to show you an artifact. I bought this from the guy who bought Stead's Review of Reviews library, and this is something you can find online. So even though I'm just going to show you a rare book, you can find the PDF readily. So let's try like this. Here we go.
Nice camera angle.
Yeah, I got this too. Let's see if we work like that.
Whoa!
Right, yeah, see? Woo,
somebody's futuristic.
Full hat fancy. I'm setting a new bar. All right, so Last Will and Testament of Cecil Rhodes by William T. Stead. Someone once paid $75 back in the pencil days. And then here's a picture of Rhodes. That's what he looked like. Here's the title page. And there's a lot of juicy quotes from here, and I'm not going to bore you guys with all the evidence of the New World Order. There's also the sad news that investigative journalist Julian Assange is going to be extradited to the United States. I believe he's an Australian citizen. I don't know how you get extradited from a prison in Britain to the United States for journalism. We're going to learn about that and his struggle over the past probably 10 years. He's been incarcerated as a political prisoner. Now, like Ross Ulbricht, who is also a political prisoner, who is held in the United States under a double life sentence, Julian Assange has suffered at the hands of politicians. It's not average people who want Julian Assange in jail. It's the powerful politicians and moneymakers behind those politicians who were exposed by the investigations, not led by WikiLeaks, just distributed as a journalistic outlet, much like any other journalistic outlet in the world. And we're going to look deeper into that story.
The persecution of Julian Assange is proof the ruling class's highest priority isn't you, democracy, humanity, or truth. It's preserving their own violent authority. And they're making an example of him because he exposed the brutal nature of their power. Democrat Joe Biden, who supported and helped continue America's catastrophically failed wars and talks a big game about the free press, is eager to prosecute the man who revealed American violence against journalists during the Republican George Bush administration. Biden loves to blame Republicans for all of America's problems, yet he won't seize a golden opportunity to protect someone who revealed grotesque misconduct under one of the worst Republican administrations in American history and one of the worst in American history in general. After all, he voted for that war when he was a senator, to this day is complicit in perpetuating the failed U.S. empire elsewhere, and bragged about crafting the War on Terror Patriot Act the Bush administration imposed at the expense of civil liberties in the name of protecting people.
I asked the Attorney General this because I got a call when he introduced the Patriot Act. He said, Joe, I'm introducing the act basically as you wrote it.
Meanwhile, Republicans love to blame Democrats for destroying America. Yet most refuse to step out of rank with the Biden administration's attempts to extradite Assange and prosecute him. Maybe that's because they're shameless war crime enablers. Or maybe it's because the charges were filed by Donald Trump's administration using a law passed by authoritarian Democrat Woodrow Wilson and exercised excessively by another authoritarian Democrat, Barack Obama. Spoiler alert, it's both. Regardless, all this proves is that it doesn't matter what team color or ideology politicians pledge allegiance to. Left and right both perpetuate the imperial war machine and will protect it at all costs, including going after Assange while spouting platitudes about peace, humanitarianism, and a free press. Administrations on both sides have aggressively attacked him for shining light on government abuses, and war machine apologists chastise him for breaking the law and claim he put people at risk, while they hypocritically defend the U.S. government doing the exact same thing in light of evidence of horrific behavior. Never forget the U.S. is prosecuting him under the Espionage Act, which, along with its partner bill, the Sedition Act, was intended to crush opposition to U.S. involvement in World War I. The global conflict of power-hungry governments that set the stage for the American government to claim moral authority to police the world in the name of democracy. The exact same propaganda paradigm at play in the Iraq War and often the broader war on terror. It has always been about power and control and the ruling class's belief that they possess ultimate authority, not only to commit violence but also to crush your freedom to question it and dissent. This is not unique to the American government. It's a trait of all governments, no matter the platitudes they spout about their commitment to peace, democracy, and humanity. But they'll look you dead in the eye and condemn others for engaging in the same behavior.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Ukraine.
Aside from the individual suffering and persecution Assange is enduring, the most important reality of his case is that the government's top priority is always itself. Those in power do not serve you. They serve themselves and the powerful interests that serve them, and its rulers and agents try to make examples of anyone who challenges their authority or embarrasses them. With Assange, the ramifications of what he exposed are not only indictments of U.S. foreign policy, but also reflect domestically with an ever-continuing militarized police state that, underpinned by war on terror policies, attempts to smear, censor, and control to concentrate and guarantee their own power. You will never be their top priority. Neither will liberty, peace, humanity, or freedom. Their loyalty is to their own authority, and their treatment of Assange and so many others who defy them should make that as clear as the footage Assange helped expose of the U.S. attacking journalists.
Next, Rand Paul. It's like a Rocky movie. Rand Paul versus Fauci. I think this is part 7. They recently went at it again, and hopefully there was no ear biting or punches to the kidney. We'll see if Rand was playing fair with Fauci.
They're now pushing vaccines on kids, on children under 5, over 5. And
boosters, right?
What's that?
It's the boosters now.
The boosters. They're even pushing boosters. And now they have no Well, there's no science to back this up, and the science that they have is very weak. And here's what Dr. Fauci goes up against Rand Paul, and Rand Paul again is able to reveal that Dr. Fauci is basing his stuff on nothing. Here we go.
Dr. Fauci, the government recommends everybody take a booster over age 5. Are you aware of any studies that show reduction in hospitalization or death for children who take a booster?
Now, that's a good question because there aren't any. So let's see if he answers. Let's see how he answers. Let's see if Dr. Fauci is going to be forthcoming and give a straight answer to a straight question. Let's see.
Right now, there's not enough data that has been accumulated, Senator Paul, to indicate that that's the case. I believe that the recommendation that was made was based on the assumption that if you look at the morbidity and mortality of children.
So he just said, so basically what he should have said was no. What they're recommending those for is based on an assumption, not science. He just said it. They're basing it on an assumption. A frickin' medical treatment for children who are at almost no risk from COVID. Again, remember, children are at almost no risk of COVID. It's so low you can't even quantify it. That's
from being hospitalized, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
From hospitalization or serious illness. Children's risk of that is so low you can't even quantify it.
Within each of the age groups, 0 to 5, 5 to 11.
Right. So there are no studies, and Americans should all know this. There are no studies on children showing a reduction in hospitalization or death with taking a booster. The only studies that were permitted, the only studies that were presented were antibody studies. So they say if we give you a booster, you make antibodies. Now, a lot of scientists would question whether or not that's proof of efficacy of a vaccine. If I give you 10, or if I give a patient 10 mRNA vaccines and they make protein each time, or they make antibody each time, is that proof that we should give 10 boosters, Dr. Fauci?
No, I think that is somewhat of an absurd exaggeration.
Okay, he's going to say that's an absurd exaggeration. So the next logical question would be, well, if it's not 10 boosters, would it be 9 boosters, 8 boosters? When are you going to stop with the boosters? Because you're telling people to give boosters every few months. So it's not absurd and it's not ridiculous. It's actually follows a logical projection. And this guy's lying like a used car salesman. He's dodging, obfuscating. He's pushing medicine that there's no science for. And nobody's outraged.
BLM was a big topic last year. It's also a bigger topic this year. Of course, I'm talking about Biden's laptop matters. It's also the title of this episode. Biden's laptop matters. There was a particular news story on this topic. It was a monologue by Tucker Carlson. Then he had a guest. I heard some stuff come across the TV that I never thought I would hear about an American president. And it's a sad, tragic, fascinating tale that's taken 2 years to get to us. Because as we all know, Hunter Biden's laptop was acquired back in October, right before the last election. The diary surfaced soon thereafter by Hunter's sister. And it was kind of just, you couldn't talk about it. It was, if you talked about any of those topics, you were persona non grata, you were banned, you were blacklisted. But now, apparently, 2 years later, it's okay to talk about this news because they feel that they've gained so much ground based on the lies and cover up that it's okay to talk about it now.
In what world is the alleged theft of a diary investigated by the FBI? Why were they doing this? Well, the answer lies in what's in the diary. And now we know what's in the diary, thanks to a new piece in the Daily News, which has a copy of the diary. Josh Boswell is a reporter there at the Daily Mail. He broke this story, and he joins us with the answer.
Hi, Tucker.
Josh, thanks so much for coming on. What is this about?
So we've looked at the diary. We've spent a lot of time considering carefully what to report from it. And what we've chosen to report are some pretty serious things that Ashley, the president's daughter, wrote. She wrote that she was musing over whether her father was sexually inappropriate with her when she was a little girl. She mentions in the diary showers with her dad. She also talks about them being probably not appropriate. She writes that down on one page in her diary. And she also refers to being hypersexualized at a young age. There's a lot of references in the diary to her repeated spells in rehab, her relapses with drug abuse, alcohol, and sex addiction as well. And there's some truly kind of shocking things in there as well about how Joe cried. He was brought to tears over worry for his daughter just before a Democratic primary debate. So we can now know, because of this diary, that there are several things that would be extremely important for national security, they not fall into the wrong hands. For example, the Chinese, right? Or the Russians, who could use this as blackmail if it wasn't published. So that's why we decided to put this out there, and why we think that it's important that the American people know this.
Well, it's prima facie shocking. I mean, fathers don't shower with their daughters at an age at which they remember it, of course. In your reporting, did you see any potential, and I know this wasn't the focus of your piece, but potential crime that would justify a pre-dawn knock raid by the FBI?
Yeah, this was an area that we covered in our reporting. We really wanted to find out, how did the diary get from where it was to to being published online. And it was left by Ashley in a house that she stayed in for a while after she came out of rehab. And then the next person who came to that house found the diary under the bed. And they're not actually being investigated by the FBI for stealing it. They're being investigated for selling it. So I don't know if that justifies a dawn raid on the people who got hold of the diary, who bought it from them. But the person who found it, she is being investigated for selling it. That's the alleged crime that the FBI are looking into.
Yeah, which is not a federal crime. So here, once again, are the words from Ashley Biden's diary. Quote, "I have always been boy crazy," she wrote, "hypersexualized at a young age. I remember somewhat being sexualized with a family member. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate."
I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. The social norms have begun to change, they've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. But I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I've worked my whole life to empower women.
I've worked my whole life to empower women. I just care too much. That was his explanation. And a lot of people bought it. But now that we know that he behaved in such a way that his own daughter believes made her sexually compulsive in later life, which is a classic symptom of abuse, it's time to reassess this. As Joe Biden said the words you just saw, his own daughter, the same daughter's life was collapsing. She was campaigning for him as she was going to rehab. And it's worth noting that right after Joe Biden's apology came out, yet another woman publicly accused him of sexual misconduct. That woman is called Vail Conert-Young. And she said that when she was a White House intern, Biden, quote, "put his hand on the back of my head and pressed his forehead to my forehead while he talked to me. I remember he told me I was a, quote, pretty girl." So at this point, no more benefit of the doubt. This man is a creep. Well, Biden was doing the same thing to his daughter in the shower, was he? We know that he showered with her in a way that she felt damaged her. If there's anything that deserves an investigation, it is this. But of course, the FBI is not looking into it because Joe Biden controls the FBI. Instead, they're trying to cover it up. And by the way, this is at least the second time that Joe Biden has used the FBI to hide drug abuse and allegations of sexual misconduct with minors within his own family. And both those stories came out this week. The FBI also swooped in when Hunter Biden violated federal gun laws and was accused, according to his own text messages, of being a, quote, pedophile by his girlfriend/sister-in-law, someone who presumably would know since she was within the family. Of course, the FBI never charged Hunter Biden with anything and said they hid the existence of his laptop for more than a year, despite the fact that laptop contained evidence of multiple felonies, not least numerous FARA violations. And FARA is a law that the White House now tells us they're enforcing with maximum vigor. But here the president's son, for years, represented foreign governments in Washington without registering as a lobbyist. That is the definition of a FARA violation. Has he been charged? No.
Last but not least, we're going to go our kickoff tonight for this episode with Luke Radowski from wearechange.org, bestpoliticalshirts.com, and lukeuncensored.com. I think are the sites. All right, now let's let Luke bring you this condensed, super distilled version of several of the biggest news events, and then we'll get into the longer form content of tonight's episode. Let's kick off.
You could bet your bottom dollar that Kamala Harris probably cackled at the latest videos that are being sent around all around the internet of course, the President of the United States falling off of his bike, which a lot of people represent to the larger falling of everything else.
What makes autonomy uniquely empowering? Autonomy is a self-help course unlike any other. Over the course of our 12-week program, you'll experience weekly live lectures from Richard Grove, specifically designed to equip you with the skills you need to set yourself free. Free from the learned helplessness taught in our schools, free from the dependence on a corrupt system that serves only to uphold the rich, free from the structure of your 9-to-5 if that's your prerogative. Plus, you'll enter into a community of like-minded individuals who are pursuing the same freedom you are, and who'll support you and learn alongside you every step of the way. A lifetime of community and the tools to live however you want. We can't wait to meet you. Learn more at getautonomy.info.